எல்லாருக்கும் வணக்கம். நான் இங்கே மெட்ராஸில் காலேஜ் படிச்சிச்சேன் அந்த தமிழ் தெரியும். So it should not be shocking to all of you. லாலா காலேஜில் 3 வருஷம் காலேஜ் படிச்சிச்சேன். கொஞ்சம் எழுதிங்க, கொஞ்சம் படிக்கிறேன் தெரியும். And it's very useful language when you travel around all over South India, especially when you impose your Tamil on Malayalis and Telugu and Kannada. You can impose your Tamil on them, and it's especially useful in North India when what's called the North Indians, they look at my face and hey, they say ching chong ping pong. I think that kind of thing. Then I speak to them in Tamil and say, அப்படி உங்களுக்கு தமிழ் தெரியல, சரி நான் ஹிந்தி பாஷை பேசுறேன், आप कुछ कह रहे थे? Being a refugee, once you have already said that you are not in your own home, in your homeland, then you give yourself this kind of acceptance and allow yourself to reach out and learn. Therefore, I've always felt that as a refugee, the biggest advantage is that you are now willing to learn languages, cultures, integrate, meet, understand, travel places. Therefore, exile is the most fertile ground for growth. And this has been my advantage as a Tibetan, born in India, educated here, and not yet citizen of India or citizen of Tibet or any other country. In that way, I am stateless. I'm not citizen of any country. And being stateless also gives you this option that you could be citizen of any country tomorrow. It is true, as Professor Marx told about me in certain ways. But today we are not discussing either Tibet or politics or anything. We are talking about writing. And this is where I want to bring my focus about. Essentially, writing is documentation. Writing is history. And the main difference between writing and speaking is much after the spoken word has gone with time, writing still remains. I noticed right from the beginning that some of you were taking notes. And I know, although I've not seen what you've written, those words are still there on the paper. But the words you heard, either from Professor Clement or Marx or the Vanakam I said, they are not here anymore. Because writing is spatial. It occupies space. Writing occupies space. And speech is said in the momentary passing. And once that is past, no one can bring them back unless you have a sound recording. And even in the sound recording, there is a digital space that the voice has occupied. Writing, because it's documentational, because it's history, bears evidence of the past. And therefore, even today, like for example, Tamil Nadu, Pondicherry, these are this is one big place where there's such a long history. all the inscriptions made on rocks are still there to see. But what kind of language they spoke at the time, no one has any memory. Writing is a solitary act. Someone sits alone and writes. But because it's done with the luxury of time, where while writing one can go into the past, refer to histories, one can also make an assumption of what is going on now in the contemporary world. One can make an imagination of the future. Writing has that luxury of time, can go through 3 dimensions of time. While speaking, you have to constantly deliver as you speak. You cannot say, "Aap ek minute ruko, main bahar jaake soch ke aata hu." You don't have that luxury of time. You have to constantly deliver, even as you have a conversation. So there's extreme pressure in speech to deliver right now. And therefore, very often, mistakes we make in speech are the ones that's actually made by the tongue, but it is the head that gets the repeating. You see, it is writing that makes the difference. And writing can be done in any language. What matters is, before you write, the writing actually happens in your head. I do not know how many of you write here in this hall. Some of you may be writing poetry, stories, articles, or at least your research papers. Some of you may not be writing or wouldn't want to write. You may have been coming here maybe because of certain class, curriculum or something like that. But you all have to write because of exams. Writing also has this advantage of keeping things very close to yourself. And unlike speaking, this is one place where one can truly be yourself, go into history. Some of you may be testing whether I'm a writer or not. That was a kind of a test that I also used to undergo. Very often you cannot call your own writing as writing, and you fear being called a writer or a poet. But what makes someone a writer is if you are juggling with words in your head, and if you have the habit of doing this, where you are constantly looking for a more exact word, many synonyms which may be more suitable. If this word jugglery is happening in your head, then you are a writer. You don't have to be a writer. What I share with many of you, some of you may be exceptions, but with many of you, what I share is that English is not my mother tongue. It's a second language. And therefore, writing in English particularly is more difficult. What comes naturally in our thought process is your mother tongue. And therefore, we very often say, I write in English. We do not say, I write English. But now, over some time, I've been saying, I write English. I do not say, I write in English. And I do not consider English as a foreign language. This is a language that I've started to learn and build up. I built a relationship with this language over some time, and now I write in the way I want it. So, this kind of a comfort relationship that I've been able to build with this language, that today when I speak or write, I do not have to keep translating in my head from Tibetan to English. And in your case, in whatever language you are closer with. What I want to speak here about is also the process of writing. Academically, you have certain ways of writing. Journalistic writing is quite different. But I'm a creative writer. I create new language in order to give expression to what I'm trying to do. And therefore, my language has to be constantly created with new expressions and new idioms also. And that's such a challenging task. And that's something most people actually fear. And not only writing, but of course, it's extremely challenging. Even the readers would think poetry, Muhammad Jao, poetry is not something I understand. Well, most people say this. I don't understand poetry. Because that's a different language that has been written. So this is the process that I wanted to discuss here in this talk today. How does a creative writer produce this language? The language of imagination. Very often people say, when we talk about writing, people say writing is expression. And I usually disagree. Because for me, writing essentially is understanding. Making sense of what is happening. Its historicity, its many implications, multi-layered context, possibility of its future. Without this depth of understanding, there can be no expression. And if at all there is anything, it will be rhetorical. And therefore writing, essentially, is understanding. And I would like to explain this process. How does this understanding happen? Then I will also talk about how to create new words, how to create new expressions. When I first started to write, it was in Bombay. One of my first lines said, I am more of an Indian except for my Tibetan place. I was obviously writing about identity because that was my primary concern. How do I explain my Chinky face to the people who look at me as a Chinese? And I would hate to be understood as a Chinese. It's just like telling Indians that you are a Pakistani. You know how angry, agitated you would be. And that's how many Indians are even today being discriminated and being called Paki in Australia or in America. And today Tibetans are being called Chinese or Chinese in India, but in a number of places and with this sense of discrimination. So one of the first things I wanted to speak about was about identity. So I came from that in one of my first poems called The Tibetan in Mumbai. There I was saying, the Tibetan in Mumbai likes to flip through the midday midday the newspaper. The Tibetan Mumbai likes to flip through the midday, loves FM, but doesn't expect a Tibetan song. You see, I was not demanding a Tibetan song be played on FM. I'm only saying I don't expect you to play this. So the fine language of not begging, nor being desperate, but quietly making a tab to the conscience of the majority. For me, there lies the poetic voice. So I am trying to write from there. So this thing called writing as an expression is where I'm trying to answer. And in writing, one of the most celebrated things is about inspiration. You know, that inspiration that people go out to the mountains, at the seaside, near the brooks, at the quiet night under the moon for inspiration. People actually, you know, there are absurd things. People actually go trying to do that, seeking inspiration. And these are all romanticized notions of writing. There's actually nothing in this. One comes back with having no words written. Even if you go with a golden pen and a silver paper, you come nothing. And therefore, I tell you, busting the myth of this romanticized notion of writing, I'll tell you, writing comes from observation, not under the starlight. Writing comes from observation. Writers are essentially like intelligence officers, spies, because of their keen sense of observation. Jasus. How do you say jasus or spy in Tamil? What is the word?
What?
Jasus. Spy. What is the word? What's the Tamil word? What's the spy in Tamil?
Spy.
Sorry? Ottan.
Okay, yeah. Also,
Of course,
it's
and
like a
there are not
traditional
just
version.
Tamilians, there may be people of other languages. So, what I'm saying is, writers like spies or jasus, writers are constantly observing. All of us see things, but we don't observe, and therefore we miss the bus. Writing essentially comes from observation. I'll tell you how. We today live a very mechanical life. We do things for study, class, bus, travel, food, lunch, birthday parties, and mobile phone, lot of things. But for a moment we need to hold and also tell ourselves, I cannot continue to follow this flow of globalized, consumerist life that we are all habituated with. And this, we need to give ourselves a hold and observe how we have become a product. We have become product for the corporate companies. We think television is a product. We think advertisements are a product. But these products, over a long time of consumption, people are becoming products too. So therefore, writing will give us a sense of resistance against this consumerist world. And therefore, today we are discussing writing as resistance. How writing gives us a clearer sense of human perspective and regain and reclaim the human independence, human integrity in thinking, and not just being the product or being part of the flow. And therefore, this observation that I am saying is such a compellingly important human power to observe, see, and then make an understanding of this. I'm sure we all have come across beggars on the street, near the chai shop, somewhere, and we never bother to speak to them. But if you had actually sat down and spoken to one of the beggars, some of them would turn out into a professional writer at one point of time. Their English may be better than ours. If you pay that attention and sit and have that discussion. Sometimes we go into the nature, we see a pair of leaves that is so attractive and wonderful that you want to pluck that pair of leaves and want to keep them in your notebook. And as you go closer, either you want to take a picture or you really wanted to pluck that pair of leaves, suddenly you see that that pair of leaves is moving. And on close observation, you see that it's not a pair of leaves, it's a butterfly. See, suddenly your perception has changed the reality. The butterfly had always been the butterfly, but you perceived it as a pair of leaves. For you, it was a pair of leaves. Now, it has become a butterfly. Observation. So observation is the beginning of creative writing. Through keen sense of observation, we see and understand, make an understanding of the ground reality. And observation gives us the data that we collected, understanding we made, it gives us a new reality. And that is bringing on change of perspective. So the second stage in writing is change of perspective. Your perspective change. So starting from observation to change of perspective, now you have a new realization. Something fantastic, something exciting to tell. You have a new story. And this is the story, which is now the matter to write. Then comes expression, articulation, the third stage. So you see, without this understanding, there's no articulation. So first thing is observation. Second is the change of perspective that gives you a new sense of reality, a new realization that you have. And then you get into giving it an articulation in your expression. Now it is here, the third stage, articulation, where the magic happens, where the creative writing happens. And all these three stages, observation, change of perspective, and articulation, all these three stages are interconnected, needn't necessarily be in this unilateral form, in this chronology. Sometimes you randomly are thinking and you have a wonderful phrase. You do not know where to place it. Articulations has already come, but you don't have a story to tell. And now you have a story about a butterfly, or about a beggar who was maybe a university teacher, or maybe perhaps a writer from earlier. So the chronology may be different, but essentially these three stages help us in becoming a writer. And why I am sharing this process of creative writing is perhaps because some of you may be writing, you may start to write. Some of you have made a promise never to write in your life. That's okay, but at least you will understand how a writer undergoes the process of writing, and you will understand that, and perhaps that will give you an edge somewhere. So in the third stage, where you need to create a new idiom, a new phrase, this is where it is challenging. And I would like to help here. If you could participate in this little exercise here. Now we are going to do a small exercise. And individually, if you could participate, it will be great that we all could create new idioms right now. So in this process, usually when we write, we have firstly a noun phrase. We have an adjective and a noun. We have, for example, the low ceiling. Ceiling is noun and low is an adjective. So we have low ceiling. Or white table. White table, adjective. Now if we do this exercise, I want everybody's participation, or whoever wants to participate in this. If you have any writing material, or if even in your phone, if you could write two nouns, just either you imagine or you write two nouns, noun 1 and noun 2. Can you just write two nouns? Randomly, any kind of noun from in the class or in Pondicherry or maybe within India or even outside. Can you just write two nouns? It's an easy process, yes. Just two nouns. Yeah, done? Okay. Can you please put together these two nouns one after the other? Yeah? Have you put together these two nouns? What did you get? Anyone who would volunteer to share in the class? Yes.
Home girl.
Home?
Girl.
Girl.
Girl. G-I-R-L. Girl.
Girl. Home girl. Okay. Home girl. Any other expression? Yes.
Book tree.
Book tree. Book tree. Any other?
Bird book.
Yes.
River television.
River television. Okay. Anyone else? Anyone else? Anyone else? Too shy to share. It's not your construction. You should neither be shy of this, embarrassed of this, nor should you be proud. It's accidental construction. Any other? Yeah. You want to say? Yes.
Education environment.
Sorry?
Education environment.
Education environment. Thank you. So you see, here, what has happened is two random nouns came together, and the first noun acts as an adjective. And second noun, the noun. Like in book tree or tree book. In the word, there is no concept of tree book or book tree. There is no. But she is created in this expression. And if we are to tell everybody, create an unimagined and non-existential phrase, all of us will fail. Because we are so restricted in our rationalization and our logical world that we are all habituated with. But because of this accidental construction, we are able to create something like book tree. And in schools, I usually do this workshop over 2 hours. And students come with fantastic new ideas. And if we are to actually collect them, we would have created an alternate world. Here, all of you are like people reserved, not me. That's okay. But what I'm explaining here is a possibility. that if you are to accidentally create, you could create out of the world unimagined, non-existential concepts you are able to create. This would help us to inspire that we purposely, if we actually work, we can create new worlds. And that's where the creative writing starts working. Because here, if a noun can work as an adjective, then a verb in continuous form can also become an adjective. Like, for example, running nose. Running nose doesn't mean nose is running. But a verb, running, it's not only a verb, but verb in continuous form. And it's acting as an adjective. In that way, all the parts of speech could interplay each other's roles. Now imagine what kind of worlds we could create if we keep changing their roles. So this is a place, this is the place from where we can bear wings and take flight in creative writing. My journey into writing, it really started from Bombay University. I fell in the company of what's called the Bombay Poets. Some of the biggest names today, Ranjit Hosgote, Jerry Pinto, Arundhati Subramaniam. These were my contemporaries. I mean, they were a little elder to me, but I was in Bombay University and they were writing and they were having this group called Poetry Circle, which used to meet every second and fourth Saturdays at New Marine Lines in Bombay. It was headed by Tenzin Tsundue. And those in English literature, you would be jealous with me if I said that I was friends with Tenzin Tsundue. And not only him, there were some of the most renowned Indian writers in English. They were there in Bombay, and I was friends in that circle. So Tenzin Tsundue, John Morez, I used to go to his house in reclamation area in Bandra West. Eunice D'Souza, Gleef Patel, Dilip Chitre, Arun Kuladkar. These are some of the biggest names, and I was able to show some of my writings to them and even received corrections by them. And it was around that time that our group used to be invited by some of the wealthiest art patrons who would invite us in their homes for high teas and early supper and things like that. And I was a university student, I didn't have a place to stay. And very often when we were in those homes with thick, high cushions, I felt like saying, can I stay here? And I knew that it would be roots that you have been invited as a poet and you are now plotting to squat and stay on. So obviously I didn't make the proposition right away, but I wrote a poem to say, can I stay in your house? I made 20 handwritten copies and gave it to 20 rich friends who had big houses on Federal Road, Gulabai Desai Road, Warden Road, Tough Parade. I'll tell you the results later. I'll read the proposal first. And this is quite a dangerous one, because if you accept, your house will have architectural destruction. So I'm saying in my proposal, pull your ceiling halfway down and you can create a mezzanine for me. Your walls open into cupboards. Is there an empty shelf for me? Let me grow in your garden with your roses and prickly pears. I'll sleep under your bed and watch TV in the mirror. Do you have an ear on your balcony? I am singing from your window. Open your door. Let me in. I am resting at your doorstep. Call me when you're awake. That was my proposal. And then later, look at the audacity of the poet. He goes up to some of his friends and asks them, did you consider my proposal? And Bichara, they were saying, oh, Tenzin, what proposal? And I remind them, the proposal I gave you in the form of a poem, did you consider? And their responses, most of them were, oh, I thought it was just a poem. But it's only in poetry where you could make such conversation. Here's another poem that I wrote about our refugee camp. The Tibetans, when they first came from Tibet after Chinese invasion of Tibet, my parents were teenagers when they escaped from Tibet into India. 1959, 1960. And however underdeveloped India was at the time, for Tibetans, it's a new world. Because Tibetans, beyond the Himalayas, at that 4,000 meters above sea level, who had not known about the First World War and Second World War, for them, seeing a train is like a nightmare. They had never seen a train in their life. They had never seen a jeep in their life. They were running away when the jeep roared and moved. They were almost like early men coming into India. And the first thing that Government of India did for them, for their rehabilitation, was they gave these Tibetan refugees work of road construction labor in the Himalayas, from Ladakh to Himachal, Uttarakhand, Sikkim, Arunachal. Many of these places, Tibetans were given the construction work. And my parents were working as coolies in Ladakh and in Arunachal. And my mother, even today, tells me the story of, I must have been 2 years old, and I must have been really restless. So she tells me that she used to tie a rope around my waist and peg it on the roadside while she sat and broke rocks and laid the rope. So you see, we were coming from such a background of being refugees. And now, almost every Tibetan speaks at least 4 Indian languages. My mother is perfect in Kannada, and I tease her with my broken tongue. So you see, this is what I'm saying right in the beginning. Exile frees you, liberates you from all the protrusions, limitations of home. And therefore, I laugh when some of my Indian friends who have proper homes who say, I cannot sleep in any other place other than my sweet bed. You know, there are people who are so used to their own homes that they cannot sleep in other places. So I tease them and say, you have become, you have imprisoned yourself in your own home. Your home has become your jail. So, but this is a concern of a refugee about being too complacent in exile. So here is a poem called Exile House. In this poem, I've used a Tibetan word called Changma. Now Changma is the willow tree it's so flexible that it will bend in high winds but doesn't break. Its branches, even if you prune them, they will quickly grow back. And in Tibet, it's used to grow around a house, around your property as a kind of a fence, and it makes wonderful shade. So the poem here is titled Exile House. The poem reads, our tiled roof dripped, and the four walls threatened to fall apart. But we were to go home soon. We grew papayas in front of our house, chilies in the garden, and changmas for our fences. Then pumpkins rose down the cowshed patch. Cows trotted out of the manger. Grass on the roof, beans sprouted and climbed down the vines. Money plants crept in through the window. Our house seems to have grown roots. The fences have grown into a jungle. Now, how can I tell the children where we came from? You see, there is this poet's anguish, that there is anxiety that we are settling down. We should not be doing it. We should be restless. We should be working. And against the flow of constantly seeking security, a little softer bed, maybe some plants in the at the windowsill, maybe your pet dog or a cat, or it's human nature to seek security, to seek comfort. At the same time, deep in your heart, you are worried about returning. What is happening to our brothers and sisters inside Tibet? Now, India is one country today. There are so many mixed marriages. People are traveling all across the country. So there are Mallu, Tamil mix living in Bombay whose children are married to Jharkhand, and also maybe Kashmiri journalists. There are such mixed, interesting stories. And I'm telling you right now, this is going to be India's story. Stories of the mixed marriages, stories of India. And therefore, stories of immigration, stories of mixed marriages, stories of what is called the chutneyfication of Indian food and dresses. This is going to be India's future tomorrow. So if you think refugee and exile literature is strange, stranger stories are going to come about in India, and this is going to be our story tomorrow. So therefore, departments who are teaching immigration, exile, refugee literature, this is the future. There's so much of scope in research. Just yesterday I was speaking to some students in University of Madras. There's a Tamilian who's a young girl. Her parents are Tamilian, but they've been posted in so many different, all across the country. She knows 5 languages except Tamil. You see, this is the reality. And that's why we say India, unity in diversity. I'll read one more, and then of course if there are any questions, comments, we can discuss. Here is a poem, it's called When It Rains in Dharamshala. And this is about Dharamshala. Dharamshala is a small hill town in Himachal. That's the place where His Holiness the Dalai Lama lives. We run a Buddha exile from there. I live there in a rented room. And this poem is about the story of that house, which I have rented, and a couple of us live together from that Kashmiri family who own the house. And I don't know, how many of you, let me see by hands, how many of you been to Dharamshala? Anyone who's been to Dharamshala? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, बाकी जो है ना वो बाद में आ जाना, ठीक है? You should come. I don't represent Ministry of Tourism, Himachal Pradesh, but as a resident in Dharamshala, you know, it's such a beautiful place, and it's so much visited by tourists now, and you should come, especially during rainy season. Now, the rainy season there, I know you get winter rains, but we get monsoon rain, and which is July, August, September, 3 months. Continuous rain. And when it rains in Dharamshala, it's not like Madras, it rains cats and dogs, yeah? We get rains like cats, dogs and donkeys. So much of rain that most of our houses are on the hillsides, and we feel that the house is going to be washed down to Kangra Valley. But that's also the season, beautiful, not because of the rains, but in between the rains. In between the rains, when the rains stop, and the sky is clear and blue. And from the height of Mathurganj, you could see the old houses down in the Kangra Valley. In minute details you could count. And you turn and look up at the majestic Doladar mountain range, part of the Himalayas. You could see the snow mountains. Then you see the Rocky Mountains. Then you see the pinewood forest, a rhododendrons with red flowers. But if you're coming, do not come there with cheap Chinese umbrellas. You will get, torn about by like tissue papers. Bring your Jones and poppies from Kerala, or bring your chata from Jalandhar, the one, big one, black, huge one. Bring that. Then you can survive in Dharamshala during the rainy season. So this is the poem. It's called "When It Rains in Dharamshala." When it rains in Dharamshala, raindrops wear boxing gloves. Thousands of them come crashing down and beat my roof. Under its tin roof, my room cries from inside and wets my bed and pillows. Sometimes the clever rain comes from behind my room. The treacherous boughs lift their heels and allow a small thunder. I sit on my ivy nation hill and watch my country in flood. Notes on freedom, memoirs of my prison days, letters from college friends, crumbs of bread, and Maggi noodles, rice, sprightly to the surface, like a sudden recovery of a forgotten memory. 3 months of torture. Monsoon in the needle-leaved pines. Himalaya, rinsed clean, glistens in the evening sun. Until the rain calms down and stops beating my room, I need to console my tin roof, who has been on duty from the British Raj. This room has sheltered many homeless people. Now captured by mongooses and mice, lizards and spiders, and partly rented by me. A rented room for a home is a humbling existence. My Kashmiri landlady at 80 cannot return home. We often compete for beauty. Kashmir or Tibet. Every evening I return to my rented room. But I'm not going to die this way. There has got to be some way out of here. I cannot cry like my room. I have cried enough in prisons and in small moments of despair. There has got to be some way out of here. I cannot cry. My room is wet enough. When I was little in school, I always dreamt that I want to be a writer. I want to be a speaker. Why in English? is because we told ourselves that the way to freedom struggle of Tibet is not taking guns, but write and tell the world the truth and contest Chinese propaganda. But after my graduation, I changed my goal of life. After my graduation, I went to Ladakh, sneaked into Tibet to fight China and to die. It didn't work. I got arrested, I was beaten, tortured by Chinese jail in Tibet. And after being in jail for 3 months, I was thrown out. And during the interrogation, I was asked again and again, who sent you? What weapons are you carrying? What training have you received? Do you know, have you trained in artillery, arms? Do you have chips hidden in your neck or in your wrists? And my answer to all of that is no. And after beating for many days, they couldn't get anything out of me. And finally, in frustration, the Chinese officer who was carrying a cigarette in his hand and a pen in his other hand was telling, and in frustration, he blurted out at me and said, "What did you do in 3 years?" I could have said to him, English culture. I could have said to him. But obviously he wouldn't understand. So I said, I studied Keats, Shelley, Byron, Rabindranath Tagore, Subramanian Bharati. And they were saying, what is this? Who are these people? These are some of the best writers I have read in my life. And then he started to laugh. He said, you studied poetry and you came here for the freedom of Tibet? And I could really see the disappointment in his face. He thought he arrested a terrorist, and what he gets is a light feather-headed poet. He was so disappointed that he threw me out back to Ladakh and said, never come back. And that poet is still working even today. How I do is that for me, this is not just writing, but writing with a purpose to find freedom of my country. And India used to think that Tibet is a gone case, but we are secure. But now that Galwan Valley happened, and now a couple of days ago, Taiwan, we all know that without independent Tibet, India is not secure. So I will go back to Inspector Saravanan and tell him, I told you, we have to work together. And the real enemy is China, not Tibetans. As a poet, as a writer, I've been writing, getting my work published on my own and selling. I'm actually on a mission to sell poetry. I penny poetry. I carry this thin book of poems, book called Kora, and sell it for 50 rupees. And I get this printed for 9 rupees a copy. And I do a transparent business of earning 41 rupees from each copy. And this is my only source of income. And I've been living on this for 20 years. And if you think living on a book of 50 rupees is like not believable, I'll tell you how I work it out. And here is the story of publication. Very often people say, I cannot get it published. I need a publisher to, publish my book. I tell you. When I first started from Bombay University, I did MA in English, and I wanted to study MA philosophy, and I didn't have money. So what I did was, out of 120 poems I've written, I put together 22 best poems. I borrowed money from my classmates, 22,000 rupees at the time in 1999. Made a collection and sold each copy for 40 rupees. Now here's the trick. I got myself invited as a poet to colleges. I went to 25 colleges, sold books, and with that money I did my MA in philosophy. I learned that trick from early time, and even today I continue to do this. This book, Gora, up until today, sold 50,000 books. And as a book of poems, in India, this is truly the bestseller. I can challenge any of the poets in India. Have you sold 50,000 books? No one has. But I don't have to go to that level. I can quietly continue to propagate and get people like Professor Mas to invite me and speak, where I share stories of publication, of writing, and tricks of writing. It is possible because also I've done the clever thing. I didn't get into the institution of marriage. And those who are married, you will understand what I mean. So with this, I've shaped my life really simple, minimal, to 2 pairs of clothes. Wherever you see, you always see me in distress. And my friends think that I have only one, but they don't know that I have 2. I wear them in turns. The one that I'm wearing now, the other one is waiting for me in Dharamshala. So you see, when you have shaped your life in 2 pairs of clothes, you have all the wealth left with which you can do your work. You see, for me, independence of Tibet is a political one, but there is also the independence that I want to create for myself, with which I can empower myself to work in this way. And going to jail is one of the things that really empowered me spiritually. You know, it has now become a habit for me to go to jail and come out smiling and making friends with all the inspectors and SPs and commissioners. That by going to jail for a good purpose, for a good purpose. By going to jail, I have learned to use my shoes as my pillow, especially the lower part of your sole, which is smooth, good for your cheeks to sleep. Use my shirt as my cover from mosquitoes, and my handkerchief as my towel, my index finger for toothbrush, and learn to live, to sleep on the floor with great ease and dignity. That nothing is under my standard. I can go to any level. I can sleep just next to the toilet and still sleep. Nothing is under my standard. Once you do this, I tell you how liberated you feel and how free you feel in jail. In jail, I found it. Thank you. If there's any question, comments, yes.
I'm Abhishya Arul from Lady Doe College, Madurai. We have your poem prescribed for us in our course Literatures of the Marginalized. So it's so overwhelming to see you here in person. I'd like to ask that, considering most of your works are in first person, and that when I read them, it hits home, ironically, to the pervasive theme of all of those works. What do you think, sir, is the role of the autobiographical element in a resistance writing or resistance literature? How does it affect a reader's perception of the problem or the force of oppression that is being discussed?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think the voice of the individual is so powerful, compelling, that it helps your audience to relate with you instead of a grand narrative or story of a nation or a people, instead of reading a history, you would like to read someone's personal story. What has happened to him or to her at what stage of life? You see, a personal story is someone you can relate to. And you immediately win the sympathy of the reader. The reader can empathize with what the writer is undergoing. That the writer is not only a writer, but that the writer has lived through this experience. The power of singular story, the power of the personal story is to bear your soul to your reader. And constantly the reader is saying, what would I do? It's constantly saying in your head, what would I do when I am in jail? What would I do when I am beaten by police? What would I do when I am jailed and at the time of going to jail, the police strip you naked, absolute stark naked in front of 6 police? What would I do? And the writer knows that your audience, your reader is with you as you write, tell your story, and the reader is constantly saying, what would I do? So the writer knows that the reader is making that assumption. There is a great sense in such a personal story, there's a great sense of performance in the story. And bearing your story, telling one person's story, representing, which then refers to the struggle you are part of, and also as a human story. As a human being, whether you're in Africa or China or America, everywhere, we all have our own problems. There's no bigger or smaller problems. For individual, we all have our own problems, and every problem is a big problem. So we cannot judge whose problem is bigger. Hunger and luxury are problems big enough to both of you. For some people, it is hair-raising problem, not able to decide which of the 20 saris you want to wear. It may sound a laughing matter, but you want to create the best image of yourself, either in a marriage or an evening get-together, or you don't want to be out of place, and you don't want to be too inconvenient also. And also, give yourself the space to change into jeans right after that. You see, it's challenging for that very person. So therefore, telling the story from not a meta-narrative of a country or a community, but telling personal story, for me at least, it helps in not only telling my story, but also getting my reader with me. Okay, any other questions? Yes.
So first of all, sir, it's a pleasure to listen. I have 2 questions from you. Apart from the writings, of course, you are known as a peculiar brand of activism you do, and we have all seen in this at IISc 2005 when the Chinese premier visited, and how did you participate? So I want to ask, how do you decide this kind of solitary act, and what does it mean to you, this kind of act? And the second question is sort of political. And have you seen the changes in Indian government policy towards the Tibet in recent years?
The kind of political activism that I have been involved in are, in a way, unique, because I've been able to do some things that are considered extreme or weird. I've climbed buildings starting from year 2002 in Bombay, when the Chinese Prime Minister Zurongji was speaking to all the Tatas and Birlas at the Oberoi Hotel on the 14th floor. I climbed up the scaffolding from outside up to the 14th floor and hung a Free Tibet banner. And because this was a building near to the sea, the windows were airtight. And they couldn't do anything to get me out. And they were threatening that they would let the lift on the scaffolding to fall on me if I didn't come down. And knowing India as a democracy with all the media together, I was resisting and constantly shouting slogans. I've done that kind of a protest in so many interesting ways. What I think is, it is the understanding of the sensibility of the people, tactics of the media, and taking the opportune moments. And my trick is to borrow the Chinese visiting prime ministers, media quota to Tibet when it was actually for him. So because of that kind of building climb protest, it happens that the next day when there are newspapers, the photograph of my protest would be almost full page, and the visiting Chinese prime ministers would be a kind of a stamp-sized passport photo, just to say this is the person who had come. And I was there covering the entire space. So you see, understanding media, but keeping it absolutely non-violent, but tactical and strategic non-violent. And therefore I would like to think that this is also taking non-violent, tactical, strategic activism to a next level, where individual can do this. About India's policy on Tibet, I think not much change has happened. India even today recognizes Tibet Autonomous what's called Tibet Autonomous Region as part of China, and China therefore says if Tibet is part of China, then Arunachal Pradesh is therefore part of China. So therefore, I think there are few things that India, I think, should reconsider if India truly wants to take up a stronger step against China for possible Chinese attacks on India. And I think it is important to look into India's policy towards Tibet, East Turkestan, Southern Mongolia. These are occupied countries. India considers all of these as part of China. And this could seriously question China. Up until now, India has been, I think, very accommodative with China. India is one country who has not been aligned to any of the major parties, has been practicing non-alignment, has been really kind, accommodated to all other countries just to make sure that our policies remain status quo. But I think there are possibilities. Up until now, not much change has happened. Any other question?
You didn't try to get Indian citizenship, or you didn't get it? Already I
Okay.
tried?
Yeah, I'll discuss this. About the citizenship thing, I have 3 papers which I wanted to show you, and this will explain the complexity of the issue. All of you have only one paper called passport, and what I have are 3. A yellow one, a blue one, and a green one. Essential paper is this blue one. This is called RC, registration certificate. And those of you who have read some of the poems, in one of the poems it says RC is registration certificate, which I renew every year. This is residential permit. This paper says that I can live in India for a period of 1 year, and then I can renew my stay. So all the Tibetans living in India have essentially this residential paper, which gives us the right to live in India for a period of 1 year, and we renew this every year. And this renewal happens at the district level foreigners registration office. So that makes us foreigners, although we are born in India. The second paper is IC, Identity Certificate. This is a travel document. This is given to Tibetans who want to travel abroad for some time, for a month, 2 months, whatever. This is a travel document. It's not a passport. It looks like a passport. It works almost like a passport, but it's only a travel document. And in the place where it is written citizenship, here is written place of origin, Tibet. It's a diplomatically worded. It does not compromise on Tibetan identity, nor does it discriminate. So it is only a travel document. And the third paper is this green one. This is for Tibetans. This is given by Tibetan government in exile based in China. And this is possibly the Tibetan passport for future free and independent Tibet. But at the moment, anyone who is subject of Tibetan government in exile has a paper like this. And with this, we make an annual contribution of 78 rupees towards the fund of the Tibetan government in exile. So you see, we have 3 papers, but none of them are passport. None of them actually say you are a citizen of such and such a country. Now, about the citizenship thing, here's the interesting story I want to tell you, which will answer your question, but it's a funny story also. So this is about the arrest that had happened here. In October 2019, when Xi Jinping was to come to Mahabalipuram to meet Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, I had come to Pondicherry. And I didn't know that there were so many Indian intelligence officers. We were talking about intelligence officers. That they were literally following me. I didn't know. And I was picked up from Pondicherry, taken to Pondicherry police station. They registered a case against me. And then I was taken to Vilupuram to be presented in front of the SDM, Divisional Magistrate. And in front of that, and that happened at 1 o'clock in the morning. The lady judge was presented my case by the SHO. And the case that was made against me was that this person is a foreigner, and for any foreigner leaving one place, coming to a new place, the person must register his departure and arrival. And this person has not done that. It's a foreigner's case, and any foreigner may be charged this case. And I argued for myself in front of the lady judge. And at that time, this paper was with me, and it was presented in front of the magistrate. And then I requested, Madam Sir, all the police were saying, Madam Sir. So I said, Madam Sir, please look into my document. And in the document it says, Tenzin Tsundue, born on such and such a date, at Manali, Himachal Pradesh. And I said, it's written there, which means that I was born before 1987 on Indian soil. And therefore, the Citizenship Amendment made in 1986 says that anyone who is born on Indian soil before 1987, immaterial of parentage, is a natural citizen of India. Therefore, I am Indian. This charge does not stand against me. Lady judge said, that's right, I am releasing you right now. Suddenly, all the police, 20 of them, rushed to Madam Sir, please don't let him go, because the order is coming from highest police officer. We cannot let this person go. Madam Sir said, it's a clear case. You brought a false case against him. Until you have a valid case, I cannot send him to judicial custody. So I was victorious. Then I knew, whatever the case, the police are not going to let me go. So all, the lady judge and the police and I are going to be stranded at Vilupuram at 1 o'clock in the morning. So I helped the police. I said, you are I called them or went aside. I said, the charge you are making against me is not this. I advised. You should pay me actually. I advise the case you should make against me is that this is Tenzin Tsundue who had protested in front of Chinese presidents and prime ministers in the past. Now that a Chinese president is going to come, he is likely to do a protest. And therefore we would like to keep him in judicial custody in preventive detention. Then, oh, correct, sir. Lady sir, and said, this man is likely to do something or other. Please give him on preventive detention to us. And lady sir signed paper, and I was sent to Puran Central Jail. And we reached there at 4 o'clock in the morning. So far I have proved that I am Indian. Now when we reached there, because I told you I'm a jail professional. When we reached there, they sent 2 policemen with me to escort and take me to the station, make sure that I'm not running away or anything. So we went. And as we reached there, I spoke in Hindi to the jailer and said, हम तो यहीं के हैं, हम कोई foreigner, हम यहाँ का नहीं है, यहाँ I spoke in Hindi. I said, but I'm foreigner here. I may be born here, but I don't have a passport. I cannot vote in India. I cannot own properties here. I'm a foreigner. You should keep me in a foreigner cell. And the police who were with me, they were looking at each other. They couldn't understand that I proved myself Indian in front of the judiciary. Now I'm proving myself as a foreigner in front of the jailer. They couldn't understand, but they didn't say a word. So I proved that I am not Indian, that I'm a foreigner, because I cannot vote, cannot own properties, do not have a passport. So they sent me into the foreigners' quarter, where you get better food. The toilets are cleaner. And I got to know later that there were 12 other Tibetans arrested, put in the same central jail, but they were kept among other Indian prisoners. And all they get is rice and sambar for breakfast, lunch and dinner. And we were getting paratha and milk in the morning, rice, dal, sambar and fruit during lunchtime. And sometimes chicken, though I'm vegetarian, I don't eat. So you see, experience tells you. Experience is something that really is a teacher. So learn. So I told you that right in the beginning, if you are stateless, you can be anyone. So this is it. So the thing is, India does not practice refugee law. So therefore, we call ourselves refugees sentimentally. Legally, no one in India is a refugee. We are all either a foreigner or a citizen. Like you. There are Tamil refugees living in India. There are Tibetans, Burmese, Nepalese, Bhutanese, Bangladeshi. But these are all on asylum living in India, and many of them have been given the same people. It's not only for Tibetans. These 2 papers. It's not only for Tibetans. Anyone who seeks asylum in India, remaining to be a foreigner, not a refugee, they get this paper. So you see, this is how it is. So India is not signatory to International Refugee Protocol, Refugee Convention and Refugee Protocol, 2 documents, international documents. If you sign, then you can keep refugees, or else you have no refugees in your country. But besides not a signatory to International Refugee Protocol and Convention, India is one country who hosts large number of people who call themselves sentimentally refugees. We call ourselves refugees. We are possible citizens, but we are not taking that citizen. And the reason is because we believe that we are here temporarily, and one day we go back to our own country. And going back to our country is more important than settling down here or taking any rights in India or any other places. But now, half of the Tibetan population are in Europe, America, and different other places. They are citizens of those countries. In India, there are 70 to 80,000 Tibetans living in different pockets in refugee camps, like in Karnataka or Maharashtra, Uttarakhand, Himachal, all across the Himalayas and different other places. And we run government exam. So for us, 150,000 Tibetans living outside Tibet. We are still outside. We are hoping we will go back to one day to our country. But our majority of our population, 6 million, 60 lakhs, are still inside Tibet under Chinese occupation. And they are the ones who are resisting. They are the ones who are maintaining the freedom struggle. And both in exile and inside Tibet, so much of new literature is coming about, mainly in Tibetan language, but also in English. So this is a fertile ground for study. And so much of change is happening, even in terms of society, in terms of food, culture, status of women, gender equality. So much of change is happening. And therefore, if there are research, possible researchers, this is one place which is so exciting to see so much of change happening in 60 years. Yeah. So, in case there are people who want to do research, this is a great place to study. Okay, that's about it. Thank you.